Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Universal Peace Federation. My name is Ray Lapalkin, and at the Universal Peace Federation, we're promoting interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universally shared values. And what we're doing is we have different sectors of society. Of course, there's business, there's academics, the religious, spiritual side and sector of our society, the parliamentarian, political side of our society. And what we're trying to do is find solutions to these different aspects of society to bring world peace. So today, we want to do a PowerPoint, and it's titled, "The Family is the Cornerstone of a Good Society." And of course, the family, a lot of times people say the family is the building block for society. So I'd like to present a PowerPoint on how the family can better become that cornerstone for society. So please enjoy. Welcome to The Family is the Cornerstone for a Better Society. Today we're going to be looking at some of the fundamental principles by which our families, all of our families, can be happier, healthier, and stronger. Today we're going to cover two topics in relation to building these types of families. The first, we'll talk about two universal principles, which are the building blocks of our families, and then we will cover the marriage blessing, which is a solution to the problems of our families today. So let's get started and talk about how to build healthier and stronger families. Now, we know that in life, if we're going to do anything right, we need to know the principles that are involved. Have you ever tried to build a piece of furniture without the directions? I wouldn't even know where to start myself. Of course, and it could be worse if I could build the whole thing only to realize I did it wrong and needed to start all over again. That's because we need to know the principles involved. This applies to all areas of our life. That's why we hire professionals to do important jobs for us. If I tried to build a house, it might end up looking something like this. Not exactly a very stable structure, or worse, if you tried to hire me as your electrician, your house might have some serious problems. Our entire universe is covered by principles. It's able to exist and function because of principles, or what we commonly call the laws of nature. This applies to everything we do and need in our lives, from flying to baking to medicine. If you're cooking Thanksgiving dinner for someone new that you're trying to impress for the first time, you're probably going to want to know exactly the principles of cooking this turkey. Otherwise, it might end up a very difficult situation. No one wants to make a bad first impression. This means we can dream of peace. We can see peace in nature, but is it enough? No, not really. If we want to have peace in our lives and our homes, we need the principles of peace. We need to understand them, and we need to live by them. So I'm sure you're wondering by now, these principles of peace, what are they? Before we get to the principles themselves, we're going to talk about the criteria for such universal principles. These principles first must be universal. In other words, they must apply everywhere. Africa, Asia, America. And they have to apply anytime. Past, present, and future. They must be scalable. In other words, they have to be true on each level, from the individual, the family, society, nation, and the world. And number 4, they have to apply to everyone, all cultures and all religions. In other words, universal principles, when practiced, will benefit us all, no matter our culture, religious affiliation, whether we're Christian, Jew, Muslim, members of other faith, or people of conscience. And finally, number 5, these principles must be scientific, logical, and simple. They must be principles that any person can understand. Now, we all know about Isaac Newton, don't we? And we credit him as a genius for his discovery of gravity. But actually, did he actually create gravity? No, of course not. It was always there. But what makes him a genius was his ability to draw attention to and explain the obvious so that it made sense in our life. In the same sense, Father and Mother Moon are these true geniuses. They did not create principles. They have been around for a long time. But what they've managed to do is help us to see them in a new light, in a way that makes them empowering and able to provide real solutions to the problems that we're facing. Well, we've gotten this far, and now it's finally ready to get to the point. What are these universal principles? At this point, we'd like to identify the two most fundamental principles. The first is called the dual purpose principle. It's what we're going to refer to as the pillar of our existence. The pillar refers to the vertical relationship between our mind, which includes our inner spirit, our conscience, and our body. The second principle is the paired system. We associate it with what we call the beam, referring to the horizontal relationship that connects two pillars, a man and a woman, in marriage. Now let's consider the pillar, the dual purpose principle. Each of us has two purposes. One is connected to our body, and the other is connected to our mind or spirit. They are not the same. But if it's left to its own desires, it would just want to eat, sleep, survive, and basically do as little work as possible. Your mind is different. Within each of our minds is our conscience. What does the conscience do? It tells us that we have another purpose, one that is of a higher dimension. Basically, it tells us that we need to live a life of goodness by living for the greater good. The key element of the dual purpose principle is that we must prioritize the greater purpose over our individual desires. Our body is important, but not as important as living for the greater good. This is the dual purpose principle, and it's not only true for individual people, it's true in all things. In school, in business, and in the nation. But where it all begins is in the family. For a family to be healthy, everyone needs to be put to the greater good of the family first, ahead of each person's personal desires. At the same time, the goal of the parents is to enable each of their children to achieve their own personal path of happiness. Now let's go back to the dual purpose and ask the critical question. What does it mean to be good? Can we find a universal definition of goodness? One that we can all agree on without violating anyone's conscience or religious tenets? Father and Mother Moon offer a definition of goodness. Goodness is to live for the sake of others. The principle is the most universal of all principles. In fact, we find it working within the conscience of each and every person, even though we may try to ignore it. Consider this situation. There are 10 people in a group of 9, and in a group total. 9 of them care nothing about the others. They're only thinking, how can I use this group of people to gain benefit for myself? But one of them is thinking, how can I bring benefit to each person in this group? No matter what religion or culture you're from, if you are asked who in this group exhibits goodness, most likely you will point to the one who cares for and acts in the best interests of the others. And if there's a marriage in which the man and woman who are selfish, both seeking to gain personal benefit from the other, if you compare that to a marriage in which the man and women are living for the sake of the other, seeking to bring benefit to the other person, and you are asked, which one do you think is a good marriage? The answer will probably universally be the same. It's because your conscience speaks clearly to us about the idea of living for the sake of others. We see this universal theme of living for the sake of others represented in all religions and cultures. Jesus gave us the high example of living for the sake of others by giving his life for the sake of the world. In Judaism, it's stated, all men are responsible for one another. And also African traditional religions. One must have the courage to face life as it is, to go through sorrows and always sacrifice oneself for the sake of others. From Father Moon, a true life is a life in which we abandon our private desires and live for the public good. This is a truth taught by all major religions, leaders past and present, East and West. And Dr. Martin Luther King, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? These are all principles of goodness. In conclusion, to live for the sake and to give of ourselves for the sake of others is good. Now let's go back to the dual purposes principle and ask the question, who are our others? Who is it that we are living for? Our first other, after we were born in this world, is our mother and father, our parents. Then we have brothers and sisters. It's in the family that we shape and establish the pillar of our being, our true sense of self. When within the family we establish the pillar of being in the unity of our mind and body with the heart to make our parents happy, then we really become a good filial son and daughter. But the beauty of the dual purpose principle, our pillar, is that it doesn't stop at just the family. If we have many families living for the greater good, then we can build a good community. Imagine a nation full of families living for the sake of the greater good. And then imagine a world full of nations that are living for the greater good. Many of us call God by different names. God, Yahweh, Allah, our Creator. I'd like to introduce a term we think that will be universal to all. Our Creator is our Heavenly Parent, because we are all children of the Almighty. Imagine a world where our Heavenly Parent is part of every aspect of creation, and it all starts within the family. With the creation of our pillar, the unity of our mind and body, vertically living for the greater good. Going back to this analogy of building a house, it's important to note when building it, the pillars are erected first. If the vertical pillars are true, then the horizontal beams can be added and they will not fail. So we've talked about the dual purpose principle first, since we need to become vertical pillars ourselves individually. Each man and woman needs to form a strong vertical pillar internally before they're qualified to form a beam. This beam culminates in marriage. And when this type of couple has children, they will pass on this first principle of mind and body unity so that their children can become strong and vertical pillars. Let's talk a little bit more about the pair system principle. This is not only a phenomena found within humans between men and women. We see this principle at work throughout the natural world. All things exist in relationships. In the world of minerals, particles, atoms, and molecules, the building blocks that form the substance of all things, they exist in a paired system based on the attractive power of positive and negative electrical charges. In the plant world, we see a similar relationship. For example, between the stamen and pistil of a flower. And in the animal world, where there is also male and female. The pair system principle is evident in all parts of society. It's embedded in our culture. We see it in the fact that every religion honors marriage. So God created humankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Mother Moon, our co-founder of UPS, says it perfectly. We marry in order to resemble God. God exists as a being of dual characteristics. Thus, husband and wife together reflect God's original nature. Why are all things created in pairs? Well, for one, to exist, grow, and multiply. This is just how the universe works. Second, love, which is the primary purpose of life, is only possible when there are two. Love is a relationship. Without a partner, love cannot exist. This means the pair system principle is the key to our happiness. It is through these relationships of giving and receiving that the beams of life are created. We see this most clearly in a family. The husband can only be a husband because he has a wife. This is why relationships are so important. The value of each person is fulfilled through the action of giving and receiving that takes place between them. But today, the tendency is for people to be thinking according to the culture of selfishness. I can be happy by myself, or my happiness is more important than anything else. Or, give me first, and I'll think about giving back. And another could be, only give the very minimum. Such an approach that wants to take first and not give will destroy relationships and therefore destroy all things. This is the culture of selfish individualism. A quote from Reverend Moon, "The desire to benefit yourself the most is natural, but if it motivates you to take, it is selfish and wrong. You must understand that to benefit yourself the most, you must give. Give your whole self to others. Then the desire to benefit yourself is good. This simple change will bring a whole new world order." The principle of true love is to give first and then receive later, or even forget that you've given. Unprincipled love takes first, then it might give back, or it even forgets to give back. Why give? Why is it so important? Well, number one, it's because love comes from my partner, not from me. It's just common sense. You don't get love from yourself, it comes from others. And so if we want to receive love, we need to invest and love in others first. For any building to stand, the pillars must be true. On that foundation, the beams will be true. You can change anything you want on the inside of a building to suit your personality, but if you take out or weaken the pillars and beams, the building will collapse. We need the pillars and beams. And the place these pillars and beams are set is in the family. That's why the family is so critical. The family is the cornerstone for good communities, nations, and world. If we look at the teachings of Jesus, we'll find the same wisdom and the same pattern. Jesus taught the two great commandments regarding love. These are the commandments on all which other commandments given by God rest. They are, number one, in Matthew, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the pillar. This is the dual purpose principle, to put the greater good first in our hearts. And the second commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. This is the beam, the pair system principle. Who is our closest neighbor? Who is our eternal neighbor? It's our spouse, our husband or wife. Let's consider what kind of world we would be living in today if the first woman and man, our first ancestors, had practiced these principles. Imagine if Adam and Eve had become a true pillar, loving God with all his heart, soul, and mind. If they had kept that commandment, they would have been qualified to love each other as husband and wife. They could have been joined together in marriage with God's blessing. Their marriage would have been the first true beam, the first true marriage founded on true love. In that case, their children would have been born out of true love. They would have been raised in true love, and they would have carried out that true love into their own future families. This was the original plan of creation, that the first family, the beginning point of all people and all civilizations, be a family of true love. Then from that family there would have merged a community of true love, a nation of true love, and ultimately a world of true love. If this had happened, all people in the world today would be living as one family under God, and the world would be at peace. Sadly, this is not what happened. The biblical story tells us that the first couple sinned and they were cast out of Eden. The first family, rather than being centered on true love, became centered on selfish love or self-centered love. This has impacted communities, nations, and the world. Instead of peace, we see division, conflict, and pain that touches everyone's lives. So what can we do? Actually, Father and Mother Moon, with the anointing of Jesus, have the solution to heal our families, and that's the marriage blessing. Would you like to know about the marriage blessing? The marriage blessing that they have founded is a blessing is the power to heal, restore, and transform marriages and families in a powerful way. Here's a picture of 60 clergy couples that have found the blessing to be significant in their lives, and it's become a powerful movement all over the world. And this is Dr. and Mrs. Luan Rouse, the heads of the American Clergy Leadership Conference, who received the blessing and giving the blessing to others as well. And the blessing has been done throughout the world in many nations. This was in South Africa in 2019. So every country and culture is doing this. So religious and political people and religious leaders and political leaders from around the world are participating in this everywhere. So the blessing is a 43-day journey. It begins with principal education. Then we have the holy wine ceremony, the marriage blessing ceremony, the chastening ceremony, the 40-day separation and preparation, the 3-night restoration of love, and the gratitude offering. So this is a 40-day or 43-day period we go to or go through in order to restore ourselves. So we can get into that a little bit later as more of the details. So I'm going to end the PowerPoint there, but just trying to invite everyone to participate in this marriage blessing. Again, regardless of your religion, this goes beyond any religion. Nobody is trying to change anyone's religion. Whether you're looking to get married, you're already married and you'd like to rededicate your marriage, or you're looking to get married. It's good for everyone. So please get in touch with us if you have any questions on this. Our contact information is at the end, and thank you for listening to this PowerPoint. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that PowerPoint. The family is the cornerstone of a good society. If you'd like to know more information on it and study a little bit more in depth, please get in touch with us. In other words, and this blessing ceremony is, again, it's not just for people new or just getting married, but it's to renew your vows, renew your marriage commitment to your spouse, regardless of your religious background. So we hope that through this, that all cultures and religions of the world can find this commonality and celebrate marriage together. So we'll have contact information at the end of the program. You can get in touch with us there, please do. And as always, I always like to offer complimentary copies of the autobiography of our co-founders, Reverend Moon and his wife, Dr. Hakshahan Moon. Please get in touch with us. Thank you for joining us today.